Lisa thought the cruise was a dream getaway, until one unexpected night changed everything. Months later, she learns the father of her unborn child is none other than the mysterious billionaire who owns the entire ship. How will he react when he finds out? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun shined through the large windows of the Thompson mansion, where Ethan Thompson adjusted his tie one last time. At 38, he was one of the most successful businessmen in Chicago, CEO of Thompson Technologies, and about to marry Miranda Wells, the daughter of his biggest investor. "Today's the big day," said James, his younger brother and best man, entering the room with a champagne bottle. "You ready to seal the deal?" Ethan nodded, but something in his eyes showed doubt. Since his father's death 6 months ago, he'd been working non-stop to keep the company growing. The wedding felt more like a business merger than a love match. "I just need some air before it all starts," Ethan said, grabbing his car keys. "Don't be late," James called after him. "Miranda will have a fit." Ethan drove his silver Aston Martin down the coastal road, the same route he always took when he needed to think. The wedding was set for noon, giving him plenty of time for a quick drive to clear his head. As he rounded a sharp curve, a truck swerved into his lane. Ethan yanked the wheel, but it was too late. The world spun, metal crunched, and everything went black. At Memorial Hospital, Lisa Murphy pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway of the ICU. At 35, she'd been working there for 5 years after her divorce left her struggling to support herself. Her simple uniform and pulled-back brown hair made her practically invisible to the doctors and visitors rushing past. The emergency doors burst open as paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. Male, late 30s, car accident, head trauma, multiple fractures, the paramedic announced to the waiting trauma team. Lisa moved her cart aside as they wheeled the unconscious man past her. She caught a glimpse of his face, handsome despite the cuts and bruises. Within the hour, the hospital buzzed with news that Ethan Thompson, the billionaire CEO, was in critical condition. Reporters gathered outside, and the hospital's security tightened. Lisa watched as elegant people in expensive clothes filled the waiting room. A stunning blonde woman in a white designer dress arrived crying dramatically, the bride whose wedding day had turned to tragedy. "I need to see him," Miranda demanded at the nurse's station. "I'm supposed to be marrying him right now." Dr. Reynolds, the head neurologist, spoke calmly. "Ms. Wells, Mr. Thompson is in a coma. We've stabilized him, but the next 48 hours are critical." James Thompson arrived with their mother, Elizabeth, a dignified woman in her 60s. They huddled with Dr. Reynolds as he explained Ethan's condition. The head trauma has caused significant swelling in his brain. We won't know the full extent of the damage until he wakes up. If he wakes up. Elizabeth covered her mouth, stifling a sob. Later that night, after the stream of visitors had gone, Lisa entered Ethan's private room to clean. She looked at the man connected to various machines, his strong features now vulnerable in unconsciousness. "Quite a day you've had, Mr. Thompson," she said softly as she emptied the trash. "Your wedding turned into quite something else, didn't it?" Lisa had always talked to patients, even unconscious ones. Her ex-husband had called it weird, but she'd read somewhere that coma patients might hear what's happening around them. "I'm Lisa, by the way. I'll be keeping your room clean while you're here." Days passed and Ethan remained unconscious. The hospital became the stage for a parade of important visitors. Miranda came daily, always perfectly dressed and made up. Always when photographers might be present. "Darling, you need to wake up," she would say, dabbing at dry eyes. "We have so many plans." Lisa noticed how Miranda never touched Ethan, never stayed more than 15 minutes, and always checked her phone constantly. James visited frequently, bringing paperwork and having whispered conversations with the family lawyer. One evening, Lisa overheard James talking to Miranda in the hallway. "The board meeting is tomorrow," he said. "With the power of attorney Dad gave me, I can take temporary control." "How temporary?" Miranda asked. "That depends on my dear brother's condition, doesn't it?" Lisa frowned at their tone. There was something calculating in their voices that bothered her. During her night shifts, Lisa started bringing books to read to Ethan during her breaks. "My daughter used to love this one," she told him, opening a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby. She's in college now, pre-med at Northwestern. I only see her on holidays. She read a few pages each night, talking to him between chapters about her day, the weather, or hospital gossip. Your mother came again today. She seems like a nice lady, genuinely worried about you. Your brother, though, I'm not so sure about him. So a month after the accident, Lisa arrived for her shift to find Dr. Reynolds examining Ethan. Any changes? She asked, forgetting her usual invisibility. Dr. Reynolds looked surprised that a cleaning lady would ask, but answered kindly. His brain activity has improved slightly, but he's still not responding to stimuli. What about when people talk to him? Can he hear? Possibly. Some studies suggest coma patients are aware on some level. It certainly doesn't hurt to talk to him. That night Lisa read with renewed purpose. Hear that, Mr. Thompson? The doctor says you might be listening, so you'd better pay attention to this next chapter. It's a good one. She thought she saw his eyelid flutter, but it might have been her imagination. Meanwhile, James called an emergency board meeting at Thompson Technologies. With Elizabeth present but silent, he presented a grim picture of the company's future, with Ethan incapacitated. As holder of my brother's power of attorney, I propose temporarily stepping in as CEO, James announced. We need leadership during this difficult time. The board voted unanimously in favor. Miranda, present as Ethan's fiancée, smiled approvingly. After the meeting in James's new CEO office, Richard Davis, Thompson Technologies' biggest competitor, poured 2 glasses of scotch. Congratulations, Richard said. Now about that sale we discussed. James smiled. Let's not rush things. We need to move some assets around first, make it look legitimate. And what about your brother? The doctors aren't optimistic, but even if he wakes up, it might be months of recovery. By then, the deals will be done. 2 months after the accident, Elizabeth Thompson sat by her son's bedside, holding his limp hand. I don't know what's happening at the company, Ethan, she confessed. James says everything's fine, but I've been getting calls from board members with concerns. I wish your father were here. He would know what to do. From the doorway, Lisa listened, feeling increasingly uneasy about the conversations she'd been overhearing. Later that evening, when the room was empty, Lisa sat next to Ethan during her break. I think something's wrong with your company, she told him. Your brother had a man in here yesterday when he thought no one was around. They were talking about selling off parts of your business. I'm no expert, but it didn't sound good. She reached out and adjusted his blanket. You need to wake up, Mr. Thompson. I think people are taking advantage while you're lying here. As if in response, the heart monitor beeped faster for a moment. Lisa's eyes widened. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, try to move your finger. Nothing happened, but Lisa felt sure he'd responded somehow. The next day, Miranda arrived with a young doctor Lisa hadn't seen before. This is Dr. Carter. Miranda introduced him to Dr. Reynolds. He's a specialist from New York. We'd like him to examine Ethan. I wasn't informed of a consultation, Dr. Reynolds said stiffly. It was a last-minute decision, Miranda explained. James and I are concerned about Ethan's lack of progress. Dr. Carter examined Ethan thoroughly, then spoke privately with Miranda and James in the hallway. Lisa pretended to mop nearby, straining to hear their conversation. Moving him to a long-term care facility would be appropriate at this stage, Dr. Carter was saying. I know an excellent place upstate. How soon can we transfer him? James asked. I can arrange it by next week. Lisa felt her stomach tighten. She didn't trust their motives for moving Ethan away from the hospital. That night she spoke urgently to the unconscious man. They're planning to move you, Mr. Thompson. I don't know why, but it feels wrong. Your brother and your fiancé, they're up to something. You need to show some sign that you're in there. She took his hand and squeezed it firmly. Please, if you can hear me at all, do something. Anything. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then, so slightly she almost missed it, Ethan's index finger moved against her palm. Lisa gasped. You can hear me. Do it again if you can. The finger twitched again, definitely intentional. Tears sprang to Lisa's eyes. I'll get the doctor right away. But before she could reach the door, James entered with the family lawyer. What are you doing in here? James demanded. Just cleaning, Lisa lied, and talking to the patient. They say it helps. James gave her a dismissive look. "We need privacy. Come back later." Lisa left reluctantly, hesitating outside the door. "The transfer papers are ready," the lawyer was saying. "Once he's in the care facility, you'll have complete control of his affairs until he recovers, if he recovers." "Perfect," James replied. "And the sale to Davis. We can proceed as soon as next week. With your brother declared temporarily incompetent and your power of attorney, the board can't stop us." Lisa's heart pounded. She had to tell Dr. Reynolds about Ethan's response, but would he believe her? She was just a cleaning lady. The next morning, she arrived early for her shift, determined to find Dr. Reynolds. Instead, she found a flurry of activity in Ethan's room. "What's happening?" she asked a nurse. "Mr. Thompson opened his eyes during the night," the nurse explained excitedly. "He's not fully conscious, but it's a significant improvement." Lisa felt a surge of joy and relief. Inside the room, Dr. Reynolds was examining Ethan, whose eyes were indeed open, though unfocused. "Ethan, can you hear me?" Dr. Reynolds asked, shining a light in his eyes. "Blink if you can hear me." Slowly, deliberately, Ethan blinked. "Good, can you move your fingers?" Ethan's right hand twitched, the fingers curling slightly. Elizabeth was there, tears streaming down her face. "Thank God," she whispered. When James and Miranda arrived, they looked more shocked than pleased. "What does this mean?" James asked Dr. Reynolds. "Is he waking up?" "He's emerging from the coma, but recovery will be a long process. He'll need extensive rehabilitation." "But we've already arranged the transfer to the care facility," Miranda said. "That won't be necessary now," Dr. Reynolds replied. "We can provide the initial rehabilitation here." James's face tightened. "As his family and fiancé, we'll decide what's best for him." Dr. Reynolds stood his ground. "As his doctor, I strongly advise against moving him at this critical stage." Later, Lisa slipped into the room during a quiet moment. Ethan's eyes were closed again, but when she touched his hand, they fluttered open. "Hello, Mr. Thompson," she said softly. "Do you remember me talking to you?" "I'm Lisa, the cleaning lady." Ethan's eyes focused on her face, showing a glimmer of recognition. His lips moved slightly, though no sound came out. "Don't try to talk yet," she said. "Just rest. But listen, your brother and fiancé, they're planning something with your company. I overheard them talking about selling parts of it to someone named Davis." Ethan's monitor showed his heart rate increasing. "I knew it," Lisa said. "You understand, don't worry, you're waking up now, you can stop them." The door opened and James entered. He stopped short, seeing Lisa leaning close to his brother. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded. Lisa straightened. "Just talking to him, it helps with recovery. You're the cleaning staff. Do your job and leave the patient care to the professionals." As Lisa left the room, she heard James speaking to Ethan in a low voice. "Don't worry, brother. Everything's under control. You just focus on getting better." But the look in James's eyes told a different story. Over the next few days, Ethan improved rapidly. He began to move his limbs more, though he still couldn't speak. Dr. Reynolds was optimistic about his recovery. Lisa kept her distance with James, watching her suspiciously, but she made sure to be in the room whenever she could legitimately be. There, one afternoon she was mopping the floor when Ethan was alone. His eyes followed her movements. "You're doing great," she encouraged him. "The nurses say you're a model patient." He made a gesture with his hand, mimicking writing. "You want to write something?" He nodded weakly. Lisa found a notepad and pen in the bedside drawer and placed it in his hand. With tremendous effort, Ethan scrawled 2 shaky words. "Help me." Lisa stared. At the words Ethan had written, her suspicions were confirmed. He knew something was wrong. "I've been hearing things," she whispered, leaning closer. "Your brother and Miranda are meeting with someone named Davis. They're planning to sell parts of your company." Ethan's face tightened with anger. He scribbled again, his handwriting barely legible. "Get lawyer." "Your lawyer? The one who comes with your brother?" Ethan shook his head firmly, then wrote, "Robert Kim. Is that your personal lawyer? Someone you trust?" He nodded, relief showing in his eyes. "I'll try to find him," Lisa promised, "but I have to be careful. Your brother's watching me." The door opened and Lisa quickly took the notepad, pretending to clean again. A nurse entered to check Ethan's vitals. "Making good progress, Mr. Thompson," the nurse said cheerfully. Dr. Reynolds says you might start speech therapy next week. After her shift, Lisa went to the hospital's public computer and searched for Robert Kim Lawyer Chicago. She found a Robert Kim at a prestigious downtown firm whose clients included Thompson Technologies. She wrote down the number. The next morning, Lisa called from a payphone near the hospital. Kim and Associates, a receptionist answered. "I need to speak with Robert Kim about Ethan Thompson," Lisa said. "It's urgent." "Mr. Kim is in court today. May I ask who's calling?" Lisa hesitated. I work at Memorial Hospital. Mr. Thompson asked me to contact Mr. Kim. He's awake but can't speak yet." "I'll give Mr. Kim the message immediately." Lisa gave her cell number, hoping she hadn't made a mistake. Meanwhile, James called an emergency board meeting at Thompson Technologies. Miranda sat beside him, looking tense. "As you know, my brother has shown signs of improvement," James announced to the board. However, his doctors confirm he faces months of rehabilitation and may never fully recover his mental faculties. Elizabeth frowned. "That's not what Dr. Reynolds told me." James continued smoothly. "Which is why we need to move forward with our restructuring plan. Richard Davis has made a generous offer for our medical technologies division." "That's our most profitable division," objected Harold Winters, the oldest board member and Ethan's mentor. "Ethan always said it was the future of the company." "Things changed," James replied coldly. "The sale will provide capital for other ventures. I think we should wait until Ethan can have some input," Harold suggested. "My brother gave me power of attorney for exactly this situation," James said. "The documents are clear. I have full authority to act on his behalf." Miranda touched James's arm. "We're only doing what's best for the company and for Ethan." The board voted, with only Harold and Elizabeth opposing the sale. Back at the hospital, Lisa was organizing supplies in a closet when her phone rang. "This is Robert Kim," a deep voice said. "You called about Ethan Thompson?" "Yes," Lisa said quietly, closing the closet door. "I'm Lisa Murphy. I work at the hospital. Mr. Thompson asked me to contact you. How do I know this is legitimate?" "He wrote your name on a notepad. He can't speak yet, but he's conscious. He wrote, 'Help me first.'" There was a pause. "What's happening there?" "His brother and fiancé are planning something with the company. Selling parts to someone named Davis. Mr. Thompson is worried." "Richard Davis," Kim said grimly. "I'll be there in an hour." Lisa returned to Ethan's room, where Miranda sat scrolling through her phone, barely looking at Ethan. "Excuse me," Lisa said. "I need to change the trash." Miranda barely acknowledged her. "James says we can move forward with the sale," she said into her phone. "The board approved it. We'll have the money by next month." Lisa caught Ethan's eye as she worked. He was listening intently to Miranda's conversation. "No, he still can't." "Talk," Miranda continued. "The doctors say it could be weeks. By then it will be too late." Lisa gave Ethan a small nod, trying to communicate that help was coming. An hour later, Robert Kim arrived at the hospital, his imposing presence drawing attention. Lisa watched from down the hall as he spoke with Dr. Reynolds, who then led him to Ethan's room. Miranda was gone and Ethan was alone. His face brightened when he saw Kim. "Ethan," Kim said, approaching the bed. "I came as soon as I heard. The cleaning lady called me." Ethan nodded, reaching for the notepad. He wrote shakily, "James selling to Davis. Stop him." Kim read it and frowned. "The medical tech division? The board already approved it this morning." Ethan's monitor showed his heart rate spiking. He wrote frantically, "No authority. Check POA. The power of attorney? James presented it to the board months ago after your father died." Ethan shook his head violently and wrote, "Fake. Never signed." Kim's eyes widened. "You're saying the power of attorney is forged?" Ethan nodded emphatically. "This is very serious, Ethan. I'll need to investigate immediately." From the doorway, Lisa cleared her throat. "Excuse me, Mr. Kim. I'm Lisa Murphy. I called you." Kim turned. "Thank you for reaching out. You did the right thing." "There's more," Lisa said. "I've been hearing conversations for weeks. They're planning to move Mr. Thompson to a care facility upstate, to get him away from the hospital and his mother." Kim's face darkened. "Not if I have anything to say about it." That evening, James returned to the hospital with papers in hand. He found Robert Kim sitting with Ethan. "Robert," James said, surprised. "What brings you here?" "Ethan contacted me," Kim replied calmly. "He has concerns about company matters." James laughed nervously. "He can't even speak. How could he contact you?" "He has his ways," Kim said, "and his concerns are quite specific, particularly regarding the power of attorney you've been using." James's face hardened. "That's none of your business. You represent the company, not my brother personally. Actually, I represent both, and Ethan claims he never signed that document." James glanced at Ethan, whose eyes were fixed on him accusingly. "He's confused. Brain damage can cause memory problems." "We'll see," Kim replied. "I've already filed for an emergency court order to halt any sales or transfers until Ethan's capacity can be properly evaluated." James's face flushed with anger. "You're overstepping, Robert. I'll have you removed from the company's legal team." "You can try," Kim said, standing. "But for now, I've arranged for a handwriting expert to examine the power of attorney tomorrow. And I've requested additional security for Ethan's room to prevent any unauthorized transfers to other facilities." After Kim left, James loomed over Ethan's bed. "You think you're so clever," he hissed. "Even half dead, you're still trying to control everything." Ethan stared back defiantly. "It won't work," James continued. "By the time you can speak again, if you ever can, it'll be too late. The deal with Davis will be done." He didn't notice Lisa in the doorway, her phone recording their conversation. The next day, Robert Kim returned with Elizabeth Thompson and a court official. "What's going on?" James demanded when he arrived to find them in Ethan's room. "The judge granted our emergency petition," Kim explained. "Mrs. Thompson is being appointed Ethan's temporary guardian until he recovers." "That's ridiculous," James sputtered. "I have power of attorney." "A document Ethan claims is forged," Kim replied. "The handwriting expert is examining it now." "This is all a mistake," James insisted. "Mother, you don't need to take on this responsibility. I've been handling everything." "Yes, you certainly have," Elizabeth said coldly, "including trying to sell off Ethan's most valued division without proper authority. It was a business decision, Mother. The board approved it." "Based on false information," Kim interjected. "You told them Ethan would never fully recover his mental faculties. Dr. Reynolds says otherwise." James glared at his brother. "You'll regret this." When everyone had gone, Lisa entered to clean. Ethan was sitting up more, looking stronger. "You did it," she said softly. "Your lawyer is really something." Ethan wrote on his pad, "Thank you, saved me." Lisa smiled. "I just did what was right." "Why?" he wrote. Lisa paused, considering. "Because I got to know you, I guess. The real you, not the billionaire in the news, but the man who listened when I talked about my daughter and my life." Ethan studied her face, then wrote, "Keep helping?" "Of course," Lisa replied. "I'm not going anywhere." Over the next few days, a storm broke over Thompson Technologies. The handwriting expert confirmed the power of attorney was forged, and James was removed from his position as interim CEO. The sale to Davis was cancelled, but the damage to the company's stock was significant. Miranda stopped visiting altogether. Tabloids reported she was seen in Miami with a young actor. Lisa continued her shifts at the hospital, splitting her time between her regular duties and helping Ethan with his rehabilitation. She brought him business news, read him company reports, and helped him practice his writing skills. One afternoon, a speech therapist was working with Ethan when Lisa came in. "Try again, Mr. Thompson," the therapist encouraged. "One word at a time." Ethan's face concentrated with effort. Thank you," he managed, his voice hoarse from disuse. The therapist beamed. "Excellent. That's enough for today. Keep practicing. After." She left. Lisa moved around the room, emptying trash bins. "Salutsi, Lisa," Ethan said deliberately. She turned, surprised. "Thank you," he said again, more clearly. Lisa felt tears spring to her eyes. "You're welcome, Mr. Thompson." "Ethan," he corrected, the word clearer than the others. "Ethan," she repeated, smiling. A week later, Ethan was moved to the rehabilitation floor. His speech improved daily, though he still struggled with complex sentences. His right side was weaker than his left, requiring physical therapy. Lisa requested a transfer to that floor, claiming the hours worked better for her. In truth, she'd grown attached to Ethan and wanted to continue helping him. "You don't have to," Ethan told her during one of her visits. "I know," she replied, "but I want to. Besides, who else is going to tell you all the hospital gossip?" He laughed, a rough sound that warmed her heart. Robert Kim visited regularly with updates on the company situation. James was under investigation for fraud, and the board had appointed Harold Winters as interim CEO until Ethan could return. "Davis is still trying?" Ethan asked during one meeting. "Yes, he's making another offer, but Harold is holding him off," Kim explained. "The stock is recovering since the announcement of your progress." Elizabeth visited daily, bringing home-cooked meals to supplement the hospital food. She'd noticed the growing connection between Ethan and Lisa. "You've been so kind to my son," she told Lisa one day. "He tells me you were the one who saw through James's scheme." "I just happened to overhear things," Lisa said modestly. "You did more than that," Elizabeth insisted. "You gave him someone to trust when he was most vulnerable." As Ethan's discharge date approached, Lisa found herself increasingly anxious. Once he left the hospital, their worlds would separate again, he to his mansion and corporate responsibilities, she to her modest apartment and hospital job. One evening, she was helping him organize the books and cards that had accumulated in his room. "What will you do first when you get home?" she asked, trying to sound cheerful. "Board meeting," he said. His speech was mostly back to normal, though he still tired easily. "Need to fix the damage. Your company is lucky to have you back." Ethan reached out and caught her hand. "Lisa." She looked up, surprised by the intensity in his eyes. "I wouldn't be going back without you." Lisa felt her cheeks warm. Anyone would have done the same. "No," he said firmly, "not anyone, just you." They were interrupted by a knock at the door. Harold Winters entered, carrying a briefcase. "Hope I'm not intruding," he said, noting their clasped hands. "Harold," Ethan greeted him. "Meet Lisa Murphy." Harold shook her hand warmly. "So you're the famous Lisa. Ethan's told me how you saved his company, and possibly his life." Lisa blushed. "I just did what seemed right." "We need more people like you," Harold said sincerely. "Now, Ethan, I've brought those reports you asked for." Lisa took the opportunity to slip out, her heart conflicted. She was happy for Ethan's recovery, but dreaded the thought of returning to her normal life without him in it. The next day, she arrived for her shift to find Ethan's room empty. Panic seized her until a nurse explained. "Mr. Thompson had some tests this morning. He'll be back soon." Relieved, Lisa started her cleaning routine. She noticed an envelope on the bedside table with her name on it. Inside was a note in Ethan's now steady handwriting. "Lisa, there's so much I want to say to you, but words seem inadequate. You came into my life when I was literally in the dark, and you brought light. I'm going home tomorrow, but I'm hoping. This isn't goodbye. Would you have dinner with me Saturday? Not out of gratitude, but because I want to know the remarkable woman who saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. Ethan." Lisa read the note twice, her heart pounding. Was this real? Could someone like Ethan Thompson actually be interested in her? Before she could process her thoughts, the door opened and Ethan returned in a wheelchair accompanied by a nurse. "Good. As new," he announced, seeing Lisa. "Well, almost. Still need this chair for longer distances." When the nurse left, Ethan wheeled himself closer to Lisa. "You found my note?" She nodded, suddenly shy. "I did." "And?" he asked, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. "Are you sure about this? I mean, I'm just a—" "Don't say it," he interrupted. "Don't say you're just anything. You're the person who saved me in every way possible." Lisa looked at the note again. "People will talk. Let them," Ethan said simply. "I've learned what matters, and who." Lisa took a deep breath. "Then yes. I'd love to have dinner with you." Ethan's smile lit up his face. "Saturday at 7, I'll send a car." "I can drive myself," she protested. "Humor me," he said. "It's not every day I get a second chance at life, and maybe at love too." The word hung in the air between them, full of possibility. The following day, Ethan was discharged from the hospital. The staff lined up to wish him well. many surprised to see him embrace the cleaning lady warmly before leaving. "See you Saturday," he whispered in her ear. Lisa watched as he walked slowly but steadily to the waiting car, leaning on a cane but otherwise moving under his own power. Elizabeth helped him in, then turned to wave at Lisa with a knowing smile. As the car drove away, Lisa felt both emptiness and excitement. Her world had changed in ways she never could have imagined when she first spoke to the unconscious man in room 507. Saturday couldn't come soon enough, but even as Lisa dreamed of possibilities, trouble was brewing. James Thompson had been released on bail, and his first stop was Richard Davis's office. "They think they've won," James seethed. "But I'm not finished yet." Davis swirled his whiskey thoughtfully. "What are you proposing?" "A new plan," James said. "One that will bring my brother down for good, and put that interfering cleaning woman in her place." "I'm listening," Davis replied with a predatory smile. Across town, in his family mansion, Ethan Thompson looked out at the setting sun, thinking of Lisa and the future that now seemed possible. After coming so close to losing everything, he had found something, someone unexpected and precious. Saturday would be a new beginning. He just didn't know that his brother was plotting to make sure it would also be the end. Lisa stood in front of her closet Saturday evening, surrounded by discarded outfits. Nothing seemed right for a date with one of Chicago's wealthiest men. Her modest wardrobe consisted mostly of practical clothes for work and casual weekends. "Mom, you're overthinking this," said Amber, her 19-year-old daughter, home from college. "For the weekend." "He likes you for you, not your clothes." "Easy for you to say," Lisa replied, holding up a simple blue dress. "You're not having dinner with a billionaire." Amber took the dress from her. "This one, it brings out your eyes. It's not fancy enough." "It's perfect," Amber insisted. "If he wanted a woman in designer clothes, he'd be with that fiancée of his." Lisa smiled gratefully at her daughter. When Amber had arrived home yesterday, Lisa had told her everything about Ethan Thompson. Instead of the skepticism Lisa expected, Amber had been supportive. "It's like a movie," she'd said. "The billionaire and the cleaning lady." "It's just dinner," Lisa had reminded her. "Don't get carried away." At exactly 7, a sleek black car pulled up outside their apartment building. The driver called to announce his arrival, and Lisa took one last look in the mirror. "You look beautiful, Mom," Amber assured her. "Go have fun, you deserve it." The drive to Ethan's home was nerve-wracking. Lisa had expected to go to a restaurant, not his mansion. The Thompson estate was north of the city, overlooking Lake Michigan. As they approached through iron gates, Lisa's anxiety grew. The house was enormous, a modern glass and stone structure that seemed to rise organically from the landscaped grounds. The driver led her to the front door, which opened before they reached it. Ethan stood there, leaning lightly on his cane, dressed in casual but obviously expensive clothes. "Lisa," he said warmly, "you came." "Did you think I wouldn't?" she asked, suddenly shy. "I worried you might change your mind," he admitted, gesturing her inside. "Getting involved with a man with as much baggage as me isn't everyone's idea of a good time." The interior of the house was stunning. High ceilings, art-covered walls, and windows framing spectacular lake views. But instead of heading to a formal dining room, Ethan led her through to a cozy kitchen where a table was set for two. "I thought we'd be more comfortable here," he explained. "Less formal." Lisa relaxed slightly. "It's lovely. I hope you don't mind, but I asked my housekeeper to prepare dinner rather than going out. I'm still not quite up for restaurant crowds." "This is perfect," Lisa said sincerely. Ethan pulled out a chair for her. "Wine? Please." As he poured, Lisa noticed his hand trembling slightly, a reminder of his ongoing recovery. "How's physical therapy going?" she asked. "Brutal," he admitted, with a smile. "But effective. I'm getting stronger every day." They talked easily as they ate, the initial awkwardness fading. Ethan asked about Amber, and Lisa shared stories of raising her daughter alone after her divorce. "Your ex-husband was a fool to leave you," Ethan said. Lisa shrugged. "It was for the best. We wanted different things. He remarried a few years ago, has 2 kids now." "And you? No one special since then?" "No time," Lisa said. "Between work and Amber's school "And now?" Ethan asked, his eyes intent on hers. "Lisa." Felt her cheeks warm. "Now I'm having dinner with you, aren't I?" After the meal, Ethan showed her around the house. Despite its size, it felt oddly impersonal. "It doesn't really feel like a home," he acknowledged when Lisa mentioned this. "My father built it as a showcase. I've never bothered to make it my own." In his study, photos lined the shelves, Ethan with politicians and celebrities, receiving awards, cutting ribbons at charity events. "Your life looks exciting," Lisa observed. "It looks empty," Ethan corrected. "I see these photos now and wonder what I was thinking. So focused on success, on proving myself to my father." He picked up a frame showing himself with James and their parents at what appeared to be a company event. "I never saw what was right in front of me. James always resented living in my shadow. I should have seen what it was doing to him." "That doesn't excuse what he did," Lisa said firmly. "No, but maybe I could have prevented it." Ethan set the photo down with a sigh. "Enough about the past. Tell me more about Amber. You said she's studying medicine?" As Lisa talked about her daughter's ambitions, Ethan listened intently, asking questions that showed genuine interest. "You're very proud of her," he observed. "She's everything to me," Lisa agreed. "I worked extra shifts for years to save for her education." Ethan seemed about to say something when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. "I'm sorry, I need to take this. It's Harold Winters." While Ethan spoke quietly in the corner, Lisa wandered to the windows. The moonlight created a silver path across the dark lake. "Everything okay?" she asked when he returned. "Just business," he said, though his expression was troubled. "Harold's concerned about some unusual stock movements. Nothing we can't handle." Later, as they shared dessert, on the terrace, Ethan seemed distracted. "I'm boring you," Lisa said. "No," Ethan said quickly. "I'm sorry. It's just coming back to all this after months away, and there's so much to fix. The company, my life, my relationships, everything." He reached across the table and took her hand. "The only new thing that feels right is this, us." Lisa looked down at their joined hands. "Is there an us, Ethan? Our worlds are so different." "They weren't so different when I was lying helpless in that hospital bed," he pointed out. "You saw me then, the real me, not the CEO or the Thompson heir. And now you're back in your world," Lisa said. "Back to board, meetings and business deals." "I'm trying to find a new balance," Ethan said. "The old way nearly killed me. I don't want to go back to that." The moonlight caught in his eyes as he looked at her. "I want to see where this goes, Lisa, if you're willing." Before she could answer, the security system chimed. Ethan frowned and checked his phone. "It's my mother," he said, surprised. "I wasn't expecting her." Elizabeth Thompson entered looking distressed, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. "Ethan, I'm sorry to interrupt your evening," she said, then nodded to Lisa. "Hello, Lisa, dear." "Mother, what's wrong?" Ethan asked, helping her to a seat. "It's James," she said. "He came to my house demanding money. When I refused, he threatened to reveal family secrets that would destroy the company." "What secrets?" Ethan asked. "I don't know," Elizabeth said. "Your father kept many things from me, especially about the early days of the company. But James was ranting about patents and stolen technology." Ethan's face darkened. "That's Richard Davis talking. He's been making those accusations for years with no proof." "James seemed so certain," Elizabeth said, "and desperate. I'm worried about what he might do." Lisa stood. "I should go. This is family business." "No," Ethan said firmly. "Please stay." To his mother, he added, "Lisa is part of this too. If it weren't for her, James would have succeeded in his plan." Elizabeth nodded. "Of course, forgive me, Lisa, I'm just shaken." Ethan called Robert Kim, putting him on speaker. "James is working with Davis," Kim confirmed after hearing the situation. "They've been meeting regularly. My sources say they're planning something big, but I don't have details yet. Increase security at all our facilities," Ethan instructed, "and have someone watch Mother's house." After the call, Elizabeth looked exhausted. Ethan arranged for his driver to take her home, with instructions to stay until additional security arrived. When they were alone again, Ethan apologized. "Not exactly the romantic evening I planned." "It's okay," Lisa assured him. "Your family needs you." "And I need you," he said simply. Your perspective, your strength. These past months have shown me what's important. He stepped closer, his hand gentle on her cheek. I'm falling for you, Lisa Murphy. I know it's fast and complicated, but it's the truth. Lisa's heart raced. I'm falling for you too, she admitted, but I'm scared. Your life is so public, so high stakes. We'll figure it out, he promised. One day at a time. When his lips met hers, the kiss was tender, questioning. Lisa responded, allowing herself to believe, just for that moment, that they could indeed bridge their different worlds. The driver took Lisa home later that night, her mind spinning with the evening's events, both wonderful and worrying. Amber was waiting up, eager for details. Well, how was it? Complicated, Lisa said, but couldn't hide her smile. On Monday, Lisa returned to work, trying to maintain normalcy despite the extraordinary changes in her personal life. Ethan had called twice over the weekend, and they'd spoken for hours, each time. During her lunch break, she was surprised when a delivery person arrived with a bouquet of daisies and sunflowers. Simple flowers for an extraordinary woman, the card read. Dinner again Wednesday, E? Her co-workers buzzed with curiosity. Secret admirer? Asked Darlene, another cleaning staff member. Something like that, Lisa said, smiling. That afternoon, Lisa was cleaning a patient's room when her supervisor approached. Lisa, could you come to the office? There's someone here to see you. Puzzled, Lisa followed her to the administrative area where a woman in an expensive suit waited. Mrs. Miller, the woman asked. I'm Vanessa Porter from the Chicago Tribune. I understand you have a relationship with Ethan Thompson. Lisa froze. Excuse me, Mr. Thompson. You helped him during his hospital stay and now you're involved. The reporter smiled insincerely. Our readers would love to hear your story. I don't have a story, Lisa said, her heart pounding. And I'm working. 5 minutes, Vanessa pressed, or I'll have to go with what other sources have told me. Lisa's supervisor intervened. You need to leave. This is a hospital, not a press conference. After the reporter was escorted out, Lisa called Ethan, her hands shaking. A reporter. Just showed up at my job, she told him. How did they find out about us so quickly? Ethan sighed heavily. I'm sorry, Lisa. Someone at the house must have talked. I'll handle it. Handle it how? My private life is about to become tabloid news. I'll have Robert call their editor, Ethan assured her. They can't harass you at work, but the damage was done. By the end of her shift, Lisa had received 3 more media inquiries, and a photographer was waiting outside the hospital. The next morning, a small article appeared in the Tribune's gossip section. Thompson airs hospital romance. It was mostly speculation, but Lisa's name was mentioned. At work, everyone was talking about it. Some co-workers were supportive, others skeptical. Aiming high, aren't you? One commented. Lisa maintained her dignity, focusing on her work, but inside she was shaken. This was exactly what she had feared. Ethan called, apologetic and angry. I've had Robert send cease and desist letters to all the major outlets. This invasion of privacy is unacceptable. It comes with your territory, though, doesn't it? Lisa said quietly. It shouldn't. And it won't continue. But it did. Over the next few days, more articles appeared, some portraying Lisa as a gold digger, others as Ethan's angel of mercy. Her past was scrutinized. Her divorce, her financial struggles, even Amber's scholarship status at Northwestern. Wednesday evening, Lisa met Ethan at a small private restaurant outside the city. She was exhausted from the constant attention. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted. My life has become a circus. Amber called from school. Reporters contacted her roommate. Ethan's face was grim. I'm so sorry, Lisa. This is my fault. No, it's the reality of your life. And now I'm seeing what that means. It will die down, he promised. They'll find a new story soon. But even as he spoke, Lisa's phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made her gasp. Thompson Technologies scandal. Insider claims CEO stole technology. Ethan took her phone and read the article, his expression darkening. The piece quoted anonymous sources claiming that Thompson Technologies' core patents were based on stolen research from Davis Technologies. James, Ethan said grimly. This is what Mother warned us about. Can he prove any of this? Lisa asked. No, because it's not true. My father developed that technology himself. Davis has been trying to claim otherwise for years. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. But allegations like this can damage stock prices, investor confidence. What will you do? Fight back with the truth? Ethan's eyes were determined, and I need to find out exactly what James and Davis are planning. Their dinner was interrupted by urgent calls from the company's PR team. By the time Ethan dropped Lisa at her apartment, both were drained. I'm sorry, he said again. This isn't what I wanted for us. I know, Lisa said, but maybe it's a sign. Of what? That this is too complicated. Too many forces pulling us apart. Ethan took her hand. Or pushing us together. Lisa, don't give up on us yet, please. She couldn't deny the connection between them, the way her heart responded to his touch. I just need time to think. The next day, Lisa was called to the hospital administrator's office. Dr. Martin looked uncomfortable as she entered. Lisa, I'll get straight to the point. The hospital's board is concerned about the publicity you're receiving. I haven't sought any publicity, Lisa said defensively. I understand that. But your relationship with Mr. Thompson has brought attention to our facility. While we appreciate Mr. Thompson's generosity, his generosity, Lisa interrupted. Dr. Martin shifted. Yes, his recent donation to our rehabilitation wing, didn't you know? Lisa felt sick. No, I didn't. Well, regardless, we need to maintain our professional environment. We're transferring you to our satellite facility in Oak Park. It's the same position, same pay, but away from the spotlight. Lisa understood what was happening. They were hiding her away, protecting their reputation while keeping Ethan's money. I see, she said coldly. When do I start? Monday. And Lisa, this is for your protection too. She doubted that very much. When? She told Ethan about the transfer. His reaction surprised her. Quit, he said firmly. Come work for my foundation. We fund medical research and scholarships, like the one Amber could receive. Are you offering me a job because you feel guilty? Lisa asked. I'm offering because you're smart, compassionate, and see people for who they really are. Those are rare qualities, Ethan replied. But if you're not comfortable with that, I understand. Lisa appreciated his sensitivity. Let me think about it. That weekend, Amber came home again, concerned about the media attention. Are you okay, Mom? She asked. Some of those articles are awful. I'm fine, Lisa assured her. Just adjusting. Gather the spotlight. Is he worth it? Amber asked directly. Lisa considered the question seriously. He might be. But I don't know if I'm strong enough for his world. You're the strongest person I know, Amber said. If anyone can handle it, you can. Sunday evening, Ethan invited both Lisa and Amber to dinner at his home. Lisa was hesitant, but Amber was curious to meet the man who had captured her mother's heart. The evening started well. Ethan and Amber connected immediately, discussing her medical studies with enthusiasm. I can introduce you to some colleagues at Northwestern Medical, Ethan offered. They might have internship opportunities. That would be amazing, Amber said, glancing at her mother with an approving smile. After dinner, they were enjoying coffee in the living room when Elizabeth arrived unexpectedly again, this time with Robert Kim. I'm sorry to interrupt, Elizabeth said, looking distressed, but we have a situation. Kim explained, James has filed a lawsuit against Thompson Technologies, claiming whistleblower status. He's alleging that your father stole the core technology from Richard Davis 30 years ago. That's ridiculous, Ethan said. There's no evidence. He claims to have documents, Kim continued, and Davis is backing him, offering expert testimony. What documents could he possibly have? Ethan demanded. Elizabeth looked away, her expression pained. There might be something. Everyone turned to her in surprise. Your father, he wasn't always ethical in his business dealings, especially in the beginning, Elizabeth admitted. He was desperate to succeed, to build something significant. Mother, what are you saying? Ethan asked, his voice strained. I don't know details, she said, but I overheard arguments, saw papers he'd hide when I entered the room. There were late-night meetings with lawyers about patent applications. Why didn't you ever tell me this? Ethan asked. I wanted to protect you, Elizabeth said. And your father's legacy, Kim interrupted. Whatever the truth, we need to prepare for the lawsuit. The company's stock is already dropping on the news. Lisa and Amber exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly feeling out of place in this family crisis. "I think we should go," Lisa said quietly to Ethan. "No, please," he said, then looked at Kim. "Can we continue this tomorrow? I'll come to your office first thing." After Elizabeth and Kim left, an awkward silence fell. Ethan looked exhausted, the weight of his family's potential deception heavy on his shoulders. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," he told Lisa and Amber. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked, moving to sit beside him. "I don't know," he admitted. "If what? My mother suggested is true. Everything I've built my life on could be a lie." Amber, showing wisdom beyond her years, said, "Even if your father made mistakes, that doesn't define you or what you've done with the company." Ethan looked grateful for her perspective. "Thank you, Amber." As they prepared to leave, Ethan pulled Lisa aside. "I understand if this changes things for you. It's a lot to take on." Lisa studied his face, the worry lines, the vulnerability. In his eyes, despite everything, her feelings hadn't changed. "I'm still here," she said simply. He held her gaze. "I don't deserve you. Probably not," she agreed with a small smile. "But I'm willing to find out." Their kiss was both tender and determined, a promise to face whatever came next together. As Lisa and Amber drove home, her daughter was unusually quiet. "What are you thinking?" Lisa asked. "I'm thinking you found someone special," Amber replied. "Someone who looks at you the way Dad never did." Lisa reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "Thank you for understanding. Just promise me one thing," Amber said. "What's that?" "When the tabloids start calling you the future Mrs. Thompson, I get to be your maid of honor." Lisa laughed, but her heart fluttered at the thought. Could she really build a future with Ethan? Despite their different backgrounds, despite the scandals and family drama, as if reading her thoughts, her phone lit up with a text from Ethan. "Thank you for staying. Whatever happens next, knowing you're in my corner makes all the difference." Lisa smiled. They had a long road ahead, but for the first time she believed they might actually make it. What she didn't know was that James Thompson was meeting with Richard Davis at that very moment, reviewing documents that could destroy not just Ethan's company, but any chance of happiness he and Lisa might have. "It's all here," James said, spreading papers across Davis's desk. "Everything we need to bring my brother down once and for all." Davis examined the documents with a predatory smile. "And the cleaning lady? What about her?" James's expression darkened. "I have plans for her too. By the time we're done, she'll wish she'd never set foot in Ethan's hospital room." The storm was gathering, and soon it would break over all their lives. The Thompson Technologies headquarters buzzed with tension. Employees whispered in corners, watching as executives rushed to emergency meetings. The company's stock had dropped 15% since James filed his lawsuit, and investors were demanding answers. In the main conference room, Ethan sat at the head of the table, Robert Kim at his side. Board members and the executive team filled the chairs, their expressions grim. "The documents James submitted appear authentic," Kim reported. "Correspondence between your father and Richard Davis from 30 years ago, along with technical drawings, that predate our patent applications." "This is absurd," Harold Winters interjected. "I worked with George Thompson from the beginning. He developed that technology himself." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Kim said reluctantly. "If these documents are verified, we could be looking at a massive judgment against us, possibly even the invalidation of our core patents." The room erupted in concerned voices. Ethan raised a hand for silence. "Let's not panic," he said firmly. "First, we need a complete forensic analysis of those documents. Second, we need to look for evidence supporting our side. My father kept extensive records. There must be something that explains this." After the meeting, Ethan retreated to his office. His headache was back, a lingering effect of his brain injury that flared under stress. He massaged his temples as Elizabeth entered. "The board wants me to settle," Ethan told her. "Pay Davis a fortune to make this go away." Elizabeth sat across from him. "And what do you want to do?" "I want the truth," Ethan said. "Did Dad steal Davis's work?" Elizabeth sighed heavily. "Your father was brilliant but driven. He came from nothing and was determined to succeed. Davis was wealthy, privileged, with all the advantages George never had. That doesn't answer my question, Mother. I don't know for certain, she admitted, but I do know that around the time in question your father was working on multiple projects with various partners. Davis was one of them, before they had a falling out. What kind? A falling out? Davis wanted majority control. Your father refused. They parted ways and each developed their own technologies. Elizabeth leaned forward. Whatever happened then, you've built Thompson Technologies into something far beyond what your father created. That's your accomplishment, not his. As Elizabeth left, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. First day at the new hospital. Missing you. Dinner tonight. Despite everything, Ethan smiled. In the chaos of the past week, Lisa had become his anchor. He quickly replied, My place at 7. Can't wait to see you. Across town, Lisa was adjusting to her new position at the Oak Park facility. The smaller hospital was less prestigious, but her co-workers were friendly, and most importantly, not obsessed with her relationship with Ethan. During her lunch break, she called Amber. How's the new job? Amber asked. Quieter, Lisa replied. No reporters hiding in supply closets. And Ethan? I saw the news about the lawsuit. He's under a lot of pressure, Lisa said. But he's handling it. We're having dinner tonight. Mom, I've been thinking, Amber said hesitantly. Maybe you should consider his job offer. Working for his foundation would be an amazing experience, especially if I want to go into medical research. Amber Murphy, are you using my boyfriend for career advancement? Lisa teased. Just saying, why not take advantage of the connection? You deserve good things too, Mom. Lisa promised to think about it. The truth was, the offer was tempting. The foundation did important work, and it would mean spending more time with Ethan. That evening, Lisa arrived at Ethan's home to find him in his study, surrounded by old boxes and files. Sorry about the mess, he said, greeting her with a kiss. I've been going through my father's personal papers, looking for anything related to Davis. Any luck? Lisa asked, helping him close a box. Nothing conclusive, just hints and pieces. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. The board's pushing me to settle, but it feels like giving in. Lisa studied his tired face. What does your gut tell you? That there's more to this story. Ethan sighed. My father wasn't perfect, but I can't believe he would simply steal someone else's work. Then keep looking, Lisa encouraged. The truth must be somewhere. Over dinner, they tried to focus on lighter topics. Lisa told Ethan about her new workplace, and he shared stories about his ongoing physical therapy. I'm thinking about your foundation offer, Lisa admitted. Amber thinks I should take it. Smart girl, Ethan smiled. She gets that from her mother. But wouldn't it seem like favoritism? The CEO's girlfriend suddenly getting a position. You'd be evaluated on your merits like anyone else, Ethan assured her, and you'd be amazing at it. Lisa was still undecided, but promised to visit the foundation offices the following week. After dinner, they returned to the study, where Ethan showed her a photo he'd found, his father with a much younger Richard Davis, both smiling in a lab setting. They really were partners once, Lisa observed. More than that. According to these letters, they were friends. Ethan shook his head. Something must have happened to turn them into enemies. As they sorted through more papers, Lisa found a small locked box in the back of a file cabinet. Have you checked this? She asked. Ethan examined it. I've never seen it before. The key must be somewhere. They searched but found nothing that would open it. Finally, Ethan used a letter opener to force the lock. Inside was a worn journal and a sealed envelope addressed simply, For Ethan, when the time comes. With shaking hands, Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in his father's handwriting. Ethan, if you're reading this, it means you're facing challenges regarding our core technology patents. Richard Davis has likely resurfaced with claims about the early days. The truth is complicated. Davis, and I did work together initially. His funding, my ideas, but when it became clear my approach was more promising than his, he tried to take control. When I refused, he threatened to claim I stole his work. I didn't steal anything, but I did take precautions. The journal enclosed contains my original, notes and concepts predating any work with Davis. I had these notarized but kept them private to avoid further conflict. I'm not proud of how our partnership ended, but I protected what was rightfully mine. Use this if necessary, but remember that sometimes the best victory is one that allows both sides to maintain dignity. Your loving father, George Thompson. Ethan stared at the letter, emotions crossing his face. Relief, vindication, sadness. This changes everything, he said quietly. With these notes, we can prove my father conceived the technology before partnering with Davis. Lisa squeezed his hand. You have your answer now. The next morning, Ethan called an emergency meeting with Robert Kim and the legal team. The journal provided exactly what they needed, proof that George Thompson had developed the core concepts independently, before ever meeting Richard Davis. This will completely invalidate James's lawsuit, Kim said confidently. Davis has no case. I want to meet with them, Ethan decided. Davis and James before this goes further. Kim protested, but Ethan was firm. My father's letter mentioned dignity. I want to end this without destroying anyone, including my brother. 2 days later, Richard Davis and James Thompson sat across from Ethan and Robert Kim in the company's conference room. The atmosphere was tense, charged with decades of rivalry and months of betrayal. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Ethan began calmly. I wanted to discuss this personally before our legal teams take it further. There's nothing to discuss, Davis replied coldly. Your father stole my work. The documents prove it. Actually, they don't. Ethan placed his father's journal on the table. This journal contains my father's original concepts, fully notarized and dated a year before he ever met you, Richard. James's face paled as he glanced at the journal. That could be fabricated, Davis argued. It's not, Kim interjected. We've had it authenticated by 3 independent experts. The notary's records still exist. Ethan leaned forward. I don't want a lengthy court battle. It would damage both our companies and drag our families' names through the mud, so I'm offering a compromise. What kind of compromise? Davis asked suspiciously. A joint research initiative between our companies. Public acknowledgement that both you and my father contributed to the early development of the technology. A fresh start, Davis laughed bitterly. After 30 years? Better late than never, Ethan replied. The alternative is that we release this evidence, countersue for defamation, and watch as your stock price plummets. Davis considered, his expression calculating. And what about him? He nodded toward James. My brother made mistakes, but he's still family, Ethan said, looking directly at James. If he drops all claims and agrees to certain conditions, there will be no criminal charges. James looked stunned. You'd do that? After everything? I nearly died, Ethan said quietly. It changes your perspective on what matters. After hours of negotiation, they reached an agreement. Davis would withdraw his support for the lawsuit in exchange for the joint research initiative. James would relinquish any claims to Thompson Technologies and enter a treatment program for his increasingly evident substance abuse issues. As Davis and James left, Ethan called out to his brother. James, when you're ready, really ready, there will be a place for you. James paused but didn't respond. Back in his office, Ethan briefed the board on the resolution. The members were relieved, and the company's stock began to recover as news of the settlement spread. Elizabeth visited later that afternoon. You handled that better than your father would have, she told Ethan. He would be proud. I'm not sure about that, Ethan replied. But I did what felt right. And James? She asked hopefully. Time will tell, Ethan said. He has to want to change. That weekend, Lisa brought Amber to tour the Thompson Foundation facilities. The modern building housed research labs, educational programs and administrative offices for the various charitable initiatives Ethan supported. Dr. Sarah Chen, the foundation director, showed them around, explaining various projects with obvious passion. Our newest initiative is a scholarship program for medical students committed to serving in underserved communities, Dr. Chen explained. We're particularly interested in first-generation college students. Amber's eyes lit up. That sounds amazing. You should apply, Dr. Chen encouraged. Lisa mentioned you're at Northwestern. As Amber chatted excitedly with Dr. Chen, Lisa found herself drawn to the Foundation's mission. It wasn't just charity, it was making tangible differences in people's lives. Ethan joined them for lunch afterward. "What did you think?" he asked Lisa. "It's incredible," she admitted. "The work you're doing here—" "We're doing," Ethan corrected. "If you join us." Lisa took a deep breath. "I'd like that, but I want to earn my position." "You will," Ethan assured her. "Dr. Chen is notoriously demanding. She won't go easy on you just because we're together." Amber watched them with a smile. "So it's official? Mom's joining the Foundation?" Lisa nodded. "Starting next month. Community Outreach Coordinator." "Perfect for you," Amber said. "You've always been good at connecting with people." Later, as they walked the Foundation's garden, Ethan and Lisa had a moment alone. "Are you sure about this?" Lisa asked. "Working together, being together, it's a lot. Very fast." "I've never been more sure of anything," Ethan replied. "When I was in that coma, your voice was my lifeline. You saw me at my absolute worst and still cared." "I saw you at your most real," Lisa corrected. Ethan took both her hands in his. "These past few months have been the most challenging of my life. Losing control of my company, almost losing my life, confronting my father's complicated legacy, but they also brought me to you." Lisa felt tears welling up. "Who would have thought? The CEO and the cleaning lady?" "No," Ethan said firmly. "Just Ethan and Lisa, two people who found each other when they needed it most." 3 months later, the Chicago Tribune's Society page featured a very different story about Ethan Thompson and Lisa Murphy. This time it was an announcement of their engagement, alongside news of Amber Murphy receiving the inaugural Thompson Foundation Medical Scholarship. The article noted that the ceremony had been small and private, with only close friends and family present, including Elizabeth Thompson and notably a sober and reflective James Thompson, attending his first public event since entering recovery. The final paragraph mentioned that the couple had established a patient companionship program at Memorial Hospital, training volunteers to read to and spend time with long-term patients, especially those in comas. "Sometimes the most profound connections happen when one person simply takes the time to talk to another who cannot respond," the new Mrs. Thompson was quoted as saying. "You never know whose heart you might awaken." In their new home, a comfortable lake house far from the Thompson mansion's ostentation, Ethan and Lisa stood on the deck watching the sunset. His recovery was nearly complete, with only the occasional use of a cane on tired days. Her transition to the Foundation had been smooth, her natural empathy and practical approach winning over even the most skeptical colleagues. "Any regrets?" Ethan asked, his arm around her waist. Lisa leaned against him. "Not one. You?" "Only that it took a car accident and a coma to find you." He kissed her temple. "Though I'd go through it all again, if that's what it took." Inside, the phone rang. Amber calling with news about her first semester in medical school. As Lisa went to answer, she paused in the doorway, looking back at her husband silhouetted against the golden lake. Life wasn't perfect. James's recovery had setbacks. The company faced new challenges. The media still occasionally intruded on their privacy. But through it all, they had each other. A connection forged in extraordinary circumstances, but built on the simplest of human kindnesses, being truly seen by another person. And that, Lisa knew, was worth everything. In her wildest dreams, she never imagined her life would take such a turn. From cleaning hospital rooms to leading foundation initiatives, from struggling single mother to loving wife, her journey had been as unexpected as it was beautiful. As she went to take Amber's call, Lisa sent up a silent thanks to whatever fate had assigned her to room 507 on that fateful day, when Ethan Thompson's world and hers had changed forever. The end.